He comes storming in, he takes that beautiful steel pot, slams it on the ground, and says, Monsieur, you shouldn't have heard that. And I says, Lieutenant, I thought you did a wonderful job. I was ready to go with these guys. He says, no, you're not infantry, you're intelligence. I just called the unit's going to pick you up. Well, with that, Chuck Scribner picked me up. To this day, I got that job. He looks at me, he goes, Monsieur, where have you been? We've been looking for you. I said, Chuck, you don't want to know. He took me to the unit. That's when I first met my commanding officer, Captain Rose. I walk in, and Captain Rose, a little short guy from Alabama. He looks up, he goes, boy, you're a good guy, aren't you? And I said, well, yes, sir, I am. He goes, well, I'll tell you what, first thing, take those horrible stripes off your shoulders. You're old enough to be a first lieutenant. Well, thank you. So he pins first lieutenant bars on me. I'm kind of liking this already. I said, you're going to pay me like a first lieutenant? I don't know. He says, you're still enlisted, and don't forget it. But it was sad. He said, the Vietnamese don't respect enlisted men. So what I had to do, I had to be an officer. And so I was the first lieutenant, or I wore U.S. all the time I was there. Well, he told me to go out and meet the rest of the group. There was 4 agents in the group, 2 interpreters, and 1 coordinator. I met him that night and got drunk with them and reported in at $500 in the morning, and that's when I started my mission. They filled me up with a book with a blacklist of all the known to BC in the area. They gave me a bunch of maps so I could orientate myself. They assigned me a chief. They gave me a call sign so I could call in helicopters if I had to use those for transportation, or I could call in artillery if needed. And they sent me out to the villages. And my whole mission was the collection of combat intelligence information. I would go into these villages with my jeep, and I had a big hook antenna on it with these speakers blaring. My squelch would be very loud purposely. That was a better weapon than any weapon I carried, because they knew I was in communications. And if I didn't communicate, their village would be toast. And you'd always go in, and with my interpreters, I would find out who was the village chief. He was the elder of the village, which he really wasn't that old. The life expectancy of the Vietnamese was 38 years old back then. But he was the elder. He'd go in, and if he liked you, he'd generally invite you in for a drink or feed you. And I would explain who I was, what I was doing, and that I had a war chest that I could supply him anything he wanted for his village and his people. In return, if any of the people in the village would like to work for me and inform me about what's going on in the area. See, Vietnam was like any other war, not like any other war. We really fought that war on intelligence. I mean, there was no lines of demarcation, there was no cities you took, there was no way of judging on you winning or losing. So by intelligence, we would know exactly who we're fighting. And there was 2 types of enemies we fought in Vietnam. We fought the NVA, which is the North Vietnam Army. These are very well-trained, they wore uniforms, they were well-supplied, they were extremely well-disciplined, they were tenacious fighters. And then you had the VC. That's what the South Vietnamese call these little guerrillas. They were recruited by the NVA. And these guys, during the day, you didn't know who they were, but at night they wore black pajamas, and they would cause havoc in the towns and villages. So it was very important when we came and engaged in a combat situation that we knew who we're fighting, were they NVA or they VC. What's their strength? What kind of weapons did they carry? What's their morale? Most important, what's their exit strategy? How long will they sustain a fight? And this was the information that I would get from the agents that worked for me. Now in this war chest, I could provide anything. Some villages wanted a well dug. Simple. I call Army Corps of Engineers and dig them a well. Some villages wanted medical care. I have a real good friend, Sergeant Sims. He drove the ambulance. I'd bring him in. He'd take care of the villages that way. Some of them wanted money. And I had more piastres than I knew what to do with, so I could supply them with money. Some people wanted some political stuff taken care of, and I had the wherewithal doing that.